All right. Well, my name is Brock Freeman, Kirkland Capital Group. I'm really honored to be sitting here in person with Malcolm Turner.
Once again.
Yeah. He's been doing deals with us for a couple of years now, and most certainly can say he's one of the best loan brokers out there in the commercial space. Really knows what he's doing. And in fact, so much so, recently you wrote a book about bridge financing.
I did. Financing the Unbankable Deal.
Nice.
How to buy commercial real estate.
I read the book. I was impressed with it. It's just really about how Malcolm's broken it down into easy to understand and really walk through a lot of the, I guess you'd say, trouble points.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get into that too much, let's have some fun first with some other questions before we go down the rabbit hole, as I know both you and I like to do.
Right.
So, first of all, I think you're around from here, but where did you go to school?
I born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. We're sitting in Royal Oak, just north of Detroit right now. I presently live in Southfield, another northern suburb of Detroit. That's also where my office is. And I went to Kettering University, but when I was there, it was in the 80s, back when it was GMI.
I didn't know. You don't look a day over 39.
I know. But back then it was GMI Engineering and Management Institute. I went there for mechanical engineering.
Wow.
And got into, I want to say in the 90s, middle 90s, I got into financial advising. In the early 2000s, had my own wealth management practice. And then they changed the law because when I was a financial advisor, there was a strict wall between banking, lending, insurance. But they repealed Glass-Steagall.
Yep.
Opened that door wide open. Citibank became Citigroup. And everyone went to the races trying to get in everyone else's pocket with money.
Yeah.
So I got into lending and did, because before I would have to recommend someone else to do a loan for a client. And it was like, oh, well, you can do them now. I'm like, oh, okay. So now we're doing lending and investing or whatever, and love the lending business. I think I probably did my first loan 2003, 2004, somewhere around in there.
And was that in the commercial space or was that in
was residential?
Residential, okay.
That was residential. Yeah. And then in 2006, I got into commercial. Actually, I was complaining to my pastor one Sunday morning in his office about an argument I had with my boss at the local residential broker. Because I put a first-time buyer like a $90,000 mortgage, and he's like, "You could have did an option arm."
I remember those.
Right. Put him in a $300,000 mortgage. You could have made $5,000. You don't like money? And I'm like, he's a first-time buyer. If that mortgage moves, which they all did, and if that thing moves, he's screwed because he's got a fixed income. He's a single guy. There's no way he's going to be able to make that payment.
Yeah.
And it's just not. Those are terrible loans.
Yeah.
And nobody read the fine print on them. They just sold them. He said, "How much do I make?"
Yeah.
Oh, and
of course, in the end, a lot of those people, unfortunately, a lot of the borrowers simply just looked at what's my payment today. What's the lowest payment I can make?
I can afford $800 a month, but I'm in a 3,000 square foot McMansion, as we used to call them back in the days.
Oh yeah.
Right, they were chugging them out like fries, and it's like, but once that mortgage moves, and that true interest rate, because they were doing like 1% interest only for the first 5 years.
Yeah.
Then that thing will jump from $800 to $4,000.
Yeah. Well, they were adding it back on principal, and then all of a sudden,
now what are you
2 years down the road?
We'll just refi.
Full.
We'll just refi and get out of it. We'll just do another one. Yeah. How'd that work?
Not well. We
Not
have to
well.
wait.
Not well. So I got an argument with him
Yeah.
about doing the right thing. I said, "Am I
Yeah.
supposed to do the right thing for our clients?" Oh, there you go, Malcolm. Talk about that. Do the right thing stuff. Okay. You know, and so I took my pastor and said, "Well, Malcolm, if you're going to do a mortgage company, how would you design it?" I'm like, well, number one, I do commercial. Commercial is about the numbers. It's not about how pretty the kitchen is, or how expansive the yard is, or the view off the back deck.
Yeah.
It's about the math.
Yeah. A lot less about emotion.
Yes.
Yeah.
And am I making money or am I not
Yeah.
making money?
Well, and I think the other big thing that fits well with your, I don't want to say moral compass. I wish everybody had that idea. But you know, more of that long-term thinking that you have for customers doesn't, unfortunately, it's not what we really see in the residential space, where
Right.
a mortgage broker might not see someone for 5-10 years, and by then they've forgotten about it, they've moved on. It's like, well, I'm going to grab my commission, and it's like, you know, unfortunately, like sometimes used car sales, where you're taking more of that long-term approach, works really in the commercial lending space, the commercial mortgage broker, the commercial property space in general, commercial real
Right.
estate. It is really about relationships. Once you build up that relational base and you do well for a client at one time, you're going to have that person, as they're building their real estate empire, come back to you again and again and again.
Yeah.
You're not selling rate and term, you're not selling the lowest payment, you're selling solutions.
Right. And in this business, relationships are everything.
Yeah.
You know, and so when I got, you know, my pastor says, well, how do you set that up? I'm like, oh, you just get an office, you get some furniture, you know, you have to get some lending relationships as a broker. You know, there's no licensing on the commercial lending side. You know, there was no licensing period back then. This is, you know, the end of 06. And I was like, yeah, you do this, you do that, boom, 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 get an office. He's like, okay, great, let's do it. I was like, wait a minute, I thought you were talking hypothetical. I wasn't actually saying I was going to do that.
I think I like this pastor already.
Well, we should do it. I was like, oh, okay. Well, all right. And within 2 months, Castle Commercial Capital was born. And, you know, that was in February 2007, 16 and a half years ago. So,
okay, so what's with Castle? What, any particular meaning there? The name?
well, stability.
Okay, I like
You know,
it. Yeah.
You know, when, you know, back in the olden days before there was banks, you know, lords and kings would keep their valuables in the castle keep, because that was the deepest, most protected spot. That's where the jewels and the gold was.
Yeah.
You know,
Makes
and
sense.
so because of that stability, that's where Castle Commercial Capital came from.
Yeah.
You know, and we've been doing it ever since. And we're doing brokerage, and then in 2019, I was approached by a $1 billion mortgage fund that said, hey, you got any notes you want to sell? And I said, no, we're just a broker. He goes, yeah, but I did commercial loans in Michigan. You pulled up on the first page of Google. So you must be doing something right over there. And I'm like, yeah, we're doing okay. And he's like, okay, so you're not a lender? I'm like, nope, strictly brokerage. Okay, you don't have any paper to sell? I'm like, nope. He says, well, you want to be one? Because obviously you know how to market, and you know, if you're writing good paper, you know, we'll buy it. And so I was like, oh, well, tell me more. And then we got into it, and it's in the commercial bridge space, you know, and no lender does everything.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
So, you know, deals that fit within our wheelhouse, you know, if we're doing like, you know, fix and flip, but I didn't do, they were trying to get me to do fix and flip loans for like a year. And I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. They're like, well, you know, we got this top broker over here, he did $180 million last year. Like, oh, okay, well, maybe I should take a look at that, you know. And so we got a relationship with guys like you,
Yep.
you know, and it works out well. Obviously, we understand risk, and you know, integrity is everything, and relationships are everything. and good people that you can know and trust. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, is hard to find.
Yeah.
You
Let me digress for a minute, because I kind of, what's interesting, and for those of you who know that I'm out of Seattle and travel here to Detroit to see a bunch of properties that you've obviously placed with us for loans, and we have from other loan brokers, and just to get a lay of the land, since we do so many loans in the Midwest. And honestly, we love the Midwest. I'm actually from Ohio, Akron, not too far away, about 3 hours away, and I just drove from there yesterday.
That's right.
So but what's amazing driving around Detroit is there's a lot of difference, obviously, between the neighborhoods, and we've done some in the neighborhoods that are up and coming, but your boots on the ground here. I'd love to hear from you why you think that there's opportunities here still, particularly from, I think a lot of people listening to this are going to be investors in our fund,
Right.
who are going sometimes to Chris and I, okay, you guys got a lot of Michigan loans. You got a lot of loans in Detroit. What's with that? And, I've heard that, Detroit ain't doing so good, but, it seems like the numbers, we wouldn't be doing these loans without the metrics, and we've always been very metrics driven. But sometimes it's helpful to hear from someone who grew up here, lived here. You've seen the ups and the downs, and what's going on now that we should believe for people who are not from here?
Let me tell you something.
Give me the boots on the ground belief in Detroit.
People who, ironically, there's a lot of people. We go out to dinner later. We could be sitting in any restaurant, in suburban Detroit. I can guarantee you, there's investors who are out of state. Who said, okay, we went and looked at this neighborhood and these houses and these commercial properties over here. What do you guys think? Because in multifamily, as an example, just one asset class, 60% of the sales were consummated by out-of-state investors.
They're seeing the value here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because of affordability. Now, what folks locally miss, folks locally don't have the perspective of Atlanta, Seattle, Dallas, Miami. But folks come from out of state, they're like, wait a minute, you mean I can buy this much income for this much money? And at home, where they're from, they're like, okay, that building would cost me $2 million.
Yeah.
I can get that here for $900,000?
Yeah.
Holy moly. Because at the end of the day, as an investor, we're buying a stream of income.
Yep.
So if I'm buying an NOI of $100,000 a year, well, what's my cash on cash to acquire that? What's my cash on cash return? Well, the lower it costs me to buy it, the bigger that return is.
Of course.
So, that's the thing about Detroit. So on the one hand, folks are like, oh yeah, man, this place is terrible. And I'm like, yeah, it is terrible. Go, as an investor. Yeah, you're right. You don't want to invest here. You don't want to invest here. But driving around town, you see development going on, and someone who's lived here, when I drive to a part of, especially in Detroit, when I drive to a certain part of the city I haven't been to in a while, I'm like, holy moly, look at all this new stuff going up. Then I may, go out to the burbs and do something, for 6 months, or then I go to another part of town I haven't been to in a minute. I'm like, hey, they got a new place over here, a new place over there. Yeah. That's a new strip mall.
Yeah. Well, even driving in on the highway, you can see the downtown, which we haven't been to yet, downtown Detroit, but I'm seeing new buildings. I saw new apartment complexes that have obviously been built in the last couple of years.
Right.
So, despite that kind of leftover poo-poo about Detroit that's so much out there in the rest of America about what happened since '08, that's obviously for the smarter folks who actually come here and look at the metrics like we have. It's like, okay, I'm seeing some opportunity here.
Right. And I personally, when I'm driving down the street as an investor, right, take my lending hat off for a second, I'm looking at triple net lease properties, right? So I'm looking at vacant, standalone buildings that I can then say, hey, Starbucks, here's a good opportunity. Hey, Olga's Kitchen, here's a good opportunity. Jamba Juice, tropical smoothie.
Yeah.
Here's a good place. When I drive throughout the suburbs and the city, I see these locations and I'll see a place, oh man, that's vacant. Okay, let me get on the phone, and I find out, oh man, someone got it already. Got it. And these corporations look at the metrics.
Sure.
So I'm
the
looking
same metrics we're looking at.
The same
seeing
metrics
rising
we're looking
income,
at.
rising spend, things coming on up, recovering.
If you got a spot, like I looked at a spot the other day, it was a Boston market that had been shut down. There's a Wendy's, there's a Baskin Robbins, there's a Pet Supplies Plus, there's the Jimmy John's, there's the CVS. There's all of those organizations, billion-dollar companies, have done their due diligence.
Yes. Otherwise they wouldn't be there.
And said, oh, look at the traffic pattern, look at the growth, look at the average income in the
Yeah.
area, and said, yeah, let's invest money. So who am I
Yeah.
to say, yeah, I'm smarter than those guys, and they're making money.
Yeah.
And they're putting up new locations,
Yeah.
and they're new strip, and they're filling them up.
I'll tell you kind of an anecdotal story here about, mostly, as many of you listening to this know, our specialty is these commercial properties at 1.2 million and lower. And, the reason they're using private bridge loans from us, and this is a lot of your book, and maybe this is a good segue to that too, but it is because you're taking an ugly property, many times an ugly property, and then you're going in because that's where the most money can be made for an active real estate investor. Yet sometimes we send those pictures out to like people that are in, want to invest in the fund. They're like, oh my goodness, why in the world would I invest in a fund that gives a loan on this kind of place? Because that's where the money is. I'm sure everybody can relate in maybe the area that you live in, that there's some part of town that, I don't know, 20, 25 years ago, I think in Seattle about the Rainier District, that you wish you would have bought some property there 25 years ago.
Oakland,
Oakland,
California.
Okay.
Now, it's too late. You missed it. But if you were there 10 years ago, you could have got some good deals that now the values are going up through time.
Exactly. And what do you think those properties looked like 10 years ago? Crap.
Right. And that's where you look at the path of development and the path of progress.
Yeah.
Right. And you can see that now in certain areas of Detroit where, like, for example, in the Midtown area, there's a lot of development already. All the low-hanging fruit's been gone from that spot.
Yeah.
But now it's going out. And it's moving north.
Yeah.
And so now the area is just north of there. There's a KFC that just went dark, okay, where the KFC shut it down, but they're still paying, right? And I was like, oh, I called on it. It's like $1 million for a vacant building, right? And I'm like, man, so I went and drove by, took a look at it. It's because of where it's at. It's in that path of progress.
Okay.
And so,
but I wonder why that KFC shut down then, or was just getting a little old.
Well, it could be that the franchisee decided to go somewhere down. The owner of that property still that KFC lease is a corporate lease, still has 7 years of payments.
Interesting.
So that's the thing about a corporate guarantee.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Even if they shut that location down, they still owe you rent.
Yeah.
Triple net.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah.
Right. So, but there'll be another one, and sometimes they'll keep it, get another franchisee who's a better operator.
Yeah.
Right.
So you might have an operator. That's the issue with some of these triple net. You might have an operator where in that franchise that's not doing a great job, so they're forcing them out, saying no, you're not. They got their contract.
Well, like that Boston market location that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
The franchisee had some tax issues or something, and I was like, oh, let's go get that. And Boston market's like, no.
We're not giving up that place.
If he can't get himself together, we got another franchisee that'll take that spot. So don't worry about it.
So right now there's a lot of angst and clickbait headlines around commercial real estate. It's doomed. Now people are trotting out and saying, Buffett has said that commercial real estate is doomed. honestly, I think this is his play to drive even more chaos and a fear in there so he can buy up more
Right,
stuff, honestly.
right.
Think about it. Think about what he's actually said, which is when everybody's fearful, that's when you should be buying.
Yes.
So I think there's something to that. But tell me, Malcolm, do you think that's warranted, or is there more to the story? And is there more to the story maybe here in Detroit? How have you seen that played out?
I don't buy it.
Okay.
I don't buy it. I am not the gloom and doom guy. I was on a lender panel. It was an commercial real estate investor summit. This was probably about a month ago, 3 weeks ago, something like that. And at some point, someone was like, "Oh, look at inflation and look at cap rates and look at interest rates." There's all this pearl clutching, on the call. And I was like, okay, time out. I'm sorry. I'm an investor. I believe in America. I know this sounds corny, okay, but I look at GDP, it's fantastic.
Yep.
We print money.
Yeah.
Everybody can't do that. China, Russia, our supposed rivals, they can't print money in other countries go, oh yeah, their money's good. No, they back their money with our money. And we can print it and they'll still buy it.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm not that guy. And I look at inflation, I'm like, wait, okay, how are you investors crying about inflation?
Yeah.
You're an investor. I love inflation. Oh, you mean my rents go from $20 a square foot to $25 a square foot?
Yeah. Well, and your asset gets, especially in commercial, your assets do continue to rise for the most part. There is exceptions to that. I mean, you can't fight the numbers on some of these primary markets where you have office buildings being cut in value, and even some multifamily in some of these markets. I know, we're talking Phoenix and some of the hot markets. And maybe that's because what goes up quickly can also maybe come down a little bit.
Well,
here
and you
because
always have
coffee.
some overbuilding. There's always a tendency to folks to jump on a bandwagon. I think multifamily has definitely been oversold as, oh, this is the asset class. And I look at it now and I say, okay, there's 10,000 coaches selling coaching programs on how to get rich in multifamily. And I'm like, going back to Warren Buffett's example, okay, I think that's time for me to look at another.
That's why you're starting to talk about the triple net.
Well, yeah. But as just another class.
Yep.
And here's the thing, everyone's raised their prices, okay? But you know what people have done? They paid them. Look at the price of eggs. Oh my God, the price of eggs. You got, eggs Benedict on your plate. What are you complaining? You still eating?
Yeah.
Oh, look at bacon. Okay, I'm still buying thin sliced.
Yeah.
The thick slice from Costco bacon, right? The double pack. Okay, it's more expensive. You know what we did? We paid it. Amazon Prime raised during COVID. They raised their annual subscription by 30% in 1 year. You know what happened? Nobody canceled. Everybody's like, okay. Netflix, same thing.
Yeah.
Raise their prices.
But that money, that extra income or revenues and money to pay that's got to come from somewhere. I was reading recently that perhaps up to 30% of small business. Now, I didn't see what exactly the definition of small business was having trouble getting clients to pay, and then you turn that around, there's driving some trouble and then making rents, leases. How fast that maybe translates into actually having to abandon a location. But on the other hand, particularly in retail, which is probably where this mostly applies, it's hard to find. You drive anywhere, even around here, as I drive around Detroit, it's hard to find any for lease signs. Once in a while, you find a for lease sign in a retail. It's because none of them have been built. So maybe that's where a lot of opportunity still is within even Detroit, fixing up buildings.
I just heard that this morning.
Yeah.
A commercial investor was talking about how he thinks there's a big opportunity because people are shying away from office. Right? They're like, oh my God, office is. Like, it makes no sense. They're not building any new office. He was like, 5 years from now, office is going to be the hot asset class.
Yeah.
Because when people walk away,
Yeah.
right? And I think one of the things that we all thought office was going to be terrible because of COVID, right? But we're social beings. We want to be.
There's something to be said about working from home and remote. I just don't think you're putting the cat quite back in the bag for that.
Well,
But if you're right, eventually it catches up, just like home building did, overbuilt. You
Exactly.
talked about your days of doing resi. Why did things crash in '08? I mean, of course, because of these crazy 100% mortgages that was given to, oh, you're breathing, here's a mortgage.
right.
Of course, they're going to go south. And then you got completely overbuilt, but then nobody was building into the early 2010s. So
That's
that
why
got
the
solved.
flipper market,
Yeah.
the rehab and flipper market is red hot nationwide because 15 years ago, all those builders got wiped out,
Yeah.
right?
So you're right. I mean, I think there is a section of office that's going to get converted. Maybe old buildings knocked down or converted. You're going to see the newer ones that can't be converted to housing. They're probably going to eventually fill up as just things change.
Well, and that's one of the new talks going around in commercial is taking office and converting it to multifamily.
Yeah.
And seeing what that like.
Easier said than done.
Easier said than done. I've seen locally some self-storage where they're converting office to self-storage.
That seems more reasonable on some of them that are enclosed where you don't have egress on those windows. Yeah.
Right.
I don't necessarily want to chase down that rabbit hole, but let's go back to kind of the investing part here.
Mm-hmm.
So in commercial real estate, we have a lot of people who have done active investors who've done fix and flips. They've maybe built up a good amount of assets that they have. They have enough cash in the bank, and they're like, I'm kind of done with this fix and flip thing because it's not really investing. It's a good way to make some money, but it's definitely not passive. It's not even as passive as, let's say, owning an apartment complex or such. And so, they kind of want to move on and think, I need to get it in commercial. What would you say are the top 2 or 3 challenges? And you've done a lot of this with your book, but top 2 or 3 challenges that someone looking to transition to active investing in commercial real estate should consider. And what's your advice about overcoming those top 2 or 3 challenges?
Well, the beauty of the question you asked is when you asked it. In October of 2023, we have access to more vast amounts of information that we did not 10 years ago. 10 years ago, if you tried to get a podcast on commercial real estate, good luck. Good luck. 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Good luck. Now, there's more real estate podcasts than you and I got fingers and toes. Not talking about all the stuff on YouTube or Instagram. Or, there's so much access to information now that one of the biggest obstacles, which is lack of knowledge and experience, you can get educated real quick. Like my book.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
One of the reasons I wrote my book was I was thinking, okay, writing it not from what do I want to write? What does the market need?
Yeah.
Right? And I went and thought through where do I add the most value on the lending side? Right? It was bridge loans. Because bridge loans help people that have challenges. The property's not perfect.
Yep.
Maybe the borrower's not perfect.
Yep.
Maybe the transaction itself, because of time.
Yeah.
It doesn't have time to fit into that nice, neat bank box that they like to do.
Yeah.
Right? So helping someone, especially on the value add side,
Yes.
right? Where, they're getting a property at, and I looked at a deal today, someone sent me, the acquisition was like $995,000. It was a 36 unit apartment building. And we're like, okay.
Still like a 36 unit for $995. I mean, that's just like pocket change compared to a lot of the primary cities out there.
Right, exactly. And I'm doing the math, right? I'm going, okay, what's the market rents? And the investor's going, in that area? At least $1,300 a month. I'm like, okay, so we go $1,300 a month times 36,
Mhm.
times 12,
Mhm.
you know, divided by 2 for the 50% expense ratio,
Mhm.
divided by 8% cap rate, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
$3 million.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the rehab budget on this? And she's like, well, I haven't had a chance to get my GC in there to take a look at it, but I just want to know, can I get financing? Like, oh, yeah.
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 Are
You're
you-
going to be able to get financing on
I'm gonna
that.
segue. I put a pause on answering the rest, but I'm just curious. Like, I do get a lot of calls. We don't provide this as a lender, this sort of buy and then provide rehab funds. But are you finding it easy? Or is there other lenders whose that's their niche is on multifamily, like kind of this deal where, yeah, I'll give you, I don't know, 60, 70 LTV, or they'll do an LTC, loan to cost type of loan.
Yeah, well, they'll do, and that's getting to be a niche in the
Mm.
lending space.
Okay.
Right? So those who swim in that
Mhm.
in that pond, and that's really blue ocean. 'Cause
Yeah.
there's not a tremendous amount of competition
No,
for that.
no, not
Right?
at all.
But those the very few
Mhm.
that swim there, they're typically right now doing like 75% of the purchase price.
Mhm.
You know, I got one lender I work with out of Maryland. They'll go 85% on multifamily
Okay.
of the purchase, and they'll finance 100% of the rehab.
Wow.
You
I mean,
know?
that's great.
And
Yeah.
so, now,
Right.
and some of them will say, because you have to look at what's the purchase relative
Sure.
to the rehab,
Sure.
right? So whatever your cost is,
Mhm.
sometimes they'll say, okay, we need to have at least 30% of cost
Mhm. Yeah.
in the deal.
Yeah.
If you got 30%,
Skin in the game. Yeah.
yeah, you got skin in the game. We'll work that
Yeah.
out. But some of the numbers
Yeah.
are tremendous.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You want that kind of loan? For those of you who've been asking me about that, you gotta come see Malcolm.
But
He knows where to go.
But one of the
Yeah.
other challenges is besides experience. But let's say you get knowledge,
Yeah.
but now I have no experience. I'm trying to break out of residential, get into commercial, but I got zero experience. That's the first thing we want to know, right?
Yep.
Have you done this before?
Oh yeah.
No. Okay, so you own no real estate, and your first deal you want to be a 50-unit multifamily,
No.
and you haven't rented a house, so you have no tenant experience of what that's like.
Yeah.
Okay, rather than say kick rocks,
Mm-hmm.
right? I say you need a partner,
Yeah.
right? You have to network,
Yep.
and there's this great phrase, I'm not the person who invented it, your net worth is equal to your net worth,
Absolutely.
right? You need to go to real estate meetups,
Yeah.
get in forums, get in some of these Facebook real estate groups, network with people,
Yeah.
find someone who's done what you're trying to do. How are you going to add value to them? You find the deal.
Mm-hmm.
If you find the deal, you cost the deal out, you
Yep.
do due diligence, okay, now it's ready made,
Yeah.
for them. And for someone who's starting from scratch, one, you can go on YouTube and learn how to underwrite a deal.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need us for that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now you watch somebody, you understand how that works.
Mm-hmm.
Now underwrite a deal every day.
Mm-hmm.
Go on Loop there,
Yep.
pull
Yep.
up a random
Yep.
property, look at the rent roll,
Yep.
look at the operating statement,
Yep.
and underwrite the deal, right? Then do another one.
Well, that's why
then do another one.
those real estate meetups are a great help because, at least in my experience working with other real estate people, it's usually a very friendly community. That's very helpful. I know in Seattle where I'm from, there's there's got to be 24 different real estate meetups in Seattle. I'm
Same
sure you
here.
must have a
Same
very vibrant real estate investment
Absolutely.
Community here in person.
Absolutely. And I was at a real estate meetup, this is probably about a year ago, and one of the investors, they have a part of the meeting where they'll do needs wants, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they'll have a mic, and each everyone can get up to the mic, and you got a minute,
Mm-hmm.
and say, okay, what do you need? I'm looking for a fix and flip, or I'm looking for multifamily.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want? I have.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I have this property. Anyone wants to buy it? I got under contract for X.
Yeah.
The rehab is X.
Yeah.
I'm looking to flip this thing, or I got this property. It's fully occupied. It's totally stabilized. Anyone's looking to get into a strip mall, and they're all 3-5 year leases. Blah blah blah. Let me know. Here's my number. You know, and one guy got up this a year ago and he said, just so you guys know, I quit my job last week. I've done well enough in real estate. You know, I've done 6 figures 3 years in a row. So now my wife will let me, right? And I'm a full-time investor. The whole room was like, go.
Yeah.
You know, not like, oh, here's another guy, poor guy. They're like, no, congratulations, go get him. There's enough opportunity in the market for everybody.
Yeah.
Those meetings are very open and friendly. They're not closed at all. You know, again, as long as someone puts themselves out as being a person of integrity, who's got a passion for the business. Because we all like working with passionate people.
Well, that's one thing we are happy to do as a lender. As long as someone's got a couple of years of fix and flip, single family, 1 to 4 unit experience, renting out, being a landlord and owner, we'll do that first property for them. But we do have those times where someone comes along as a broker and says, oh, I got someone trying to get into, you know, they want to do a retail strip mall and they have 0 experience. Like, look, go get some experience with somebody else, or, you know, partner with a deal, or go do some single family. Places where you either get someone to help you who has that experience so you don't make the mistakes, or you go do something on something smaller where your mistake's not going to cost you your financial life. Because the mistakes you make on commercial property could end it prematurely.
Right. Well, and that's where management comes in, right? Do you have professional management handling this for you? You know, if you're going to be like, think it's mailbox money, it may be more involved in that than you think. But that's what talking to someone and networking people says, listen, dude, you're not just going to walk in there and the checks are just going to fall out. You got to work for it.
What are the things in your book that you did such a great job with your, I like the whole Bliss, the acronym that you did, was great. As you know, for us, we have an investment fund with investors, including myself and Chris. We know a significant amount of our net worth, but sometimes getting across to people and explaining to them, they're shocked. They've never done or even been around private lending themselves, and so you know, for them, maybe they made their money being an entrepreneur in tech, and the best thing that for them that they've ever done in real estate is buy their own house. You know, and they got, you know, they're sitting on a 2.625, you know, 30-year fixed rate.
Right.
And so, you know, they're looking at you charge how much? 14% on some loans? What? Are you a loan shark? I mean, how is this legal?
Right.
Of course, I have to remind sometimes them, or Chris reminds them that, well, you know, at one time in not too long history here in America, we did have prime rate in the 14s, 15s, 16s. But anyway, maybe on these bridge loans, you can kind of explain why these types of loans are important, and why is someone buying a piece of real estate or cash out, why would they even be willing to pay what seems like exorbitant rates?
Well, I think it all comes back to the math, right? In what universe does 12, 13, 14% rates, and we don't even talk about the points, right? Where does all of that make sense? Right? Well, you know, going back to my book, you know, the Bliss method, you know, the bridge loan investor success strategy gets into how you can have that property I mentioned earlier. It's 36 units. It's vacant, right?
It's vacant.
Okay.
Yep.
But the market rent in that neighborhood is, you know, $1,200 a month. It's in a good area, but this for some reason, whatever reason occurred, this property got neglected. Okay. Now they're putting it out on the market. Okay. Now at one point, the seller was trying to sell this thing. You know how sellers are. They want the after repaired value.
Of course they do.
Like, oh, this thing will be worth $3 million. You know, after you do all this stuff and fix it up. Yeah, but I'm not going to pay you $3 million for it now. Not when it's vacant and I got to do all that work and I have to find those tenants and lease it up and blah blah blah. You know, and they're like, well, so it may take a while for them to come down, their price to come down and be more realistic. Well, at $1 million, you say, hey, if I put in, let's say hypothetically, we'll use around even million. That's $27,000 a unit.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's
Okay, that'll get that unit, that whole building up to market level real quick.
mm-hmm.
Okay, in 12 months, if you got a good GC.
Yep.
Okay, you now have an asset worth 3.
Yeah.
The problem is today,
Mm-hmm.
it's not bankable.
Right.
They can't
No
go to
bank.
Chase,
Not only-
Bank of America.
Not only do they not can't touch it, they don't want to touch it anymore. They don't want banks, prime lenders, long-term lenders. They don't want anything that's not stabilized.
That's right. There's no cash flow. Therefore, the value of the asset is in the toilet.
Mm-hmm.
So we're like, yeah, we can't touch that.
Yep.
Right? Well, the investor's thinking, I can turn this into a $3 million asset. You know, I just need someone to help me out.
Yeah.
So when we show up
Mm-hmm.
and we say, hey, we usually have this thing called a commercial bridge loan where it's not dependent
Yeah.
upon it being fully occupied
Right.
and cash flowing
Right.
and in great prime A condition.
So you're talking about the ugly property that no one's loving right now, and it's single.
Right. And when the national
Yeah.
and local
Yeah.
occupancy for multifamily is 95%,
Yep.
okay, yeah, I'm gonna fill those 36 units up,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's where we come in. And they look at that and says, yeah, of course I'm gonna pay, 14% and,
Mhm.
2 to 4 points on the deal because I'm going to have an asset worth $3 million
Yeah.
and now going up as those rents continue to
Yeah.
rise
Yeah.
at that point.
So you're saying it's really, they look at it, they turn around and they're sort of ignoring the rate and the points and the closing cost, and they're looking at what's my ROI on this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, like any tool, it's just like, they're going to have to pay out a lot of money for contractors and fixing it up. But again, it's just, you calculate it as a business, looking at that return on investment. Does it make sense? And if it doesn't, they walk.
If my cost basis when I'm done is $2 million,
Mm-hmm.
one on the acquisition, one on the rehab,
Yep.
right? But my asset
And
value
financing
is
costs,
3,
right?
right? Well, yeah,
Yeah.
and we throw some
Yeah.
finance costs in there, like, okay. Now let's play devil's advocate. Throw the value add thing out for a second, right? One of the other things I talk about in my book, and I've used your client for this, right, with some of my investors,
Mm-hmm.
is opportunities.
Yeah.
Where you get a seller, they're in a bad situation, it's bad timing.
Mm-hmm.
I had a deal, the buyer walked away the day before closing,
Mm-hmm.
and the seller was ticked.
Mm-hmm.
My borrower, right, who got outbidded on the deal,
Mm-hmm.
right, came in, talked to us, said, hey, did that deal close? No. Oh, you know what? Tell you what, I'll close in 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But it's got to be at my original offer, which is
Mhm.
25% less
Mm-hmm.
than what they were supposed to close at,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you're 25%, man, that's a
That's a big discount.
that's a big discount. But you know what the seller said? Okay, 3 weeks? Yeah.
Because they're distressed. They need that money right away for something.
They already spent that money. And they already bought the tickets to Florida. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so
Yeah.
they're like, sure. Now, full fair disclosure, and I talk about this in the case study, because my book has case studies in it, right? They did realize they made an emotional decision,
Mm-hmm.
and 4 days later, the listing agent calls me and say, Malcolm, you still on track to close in 3 weeks? And I'm like, oh yeah. He's like, okay, because they realized they got a little emotional there, and they could have waited. And so there will be no extensions on that PA.
Then you need a lender who can perform.
Who can perform?
Yep.
And the buyer, right?
Yep.
Who's my borrower?
Yep.
Is like, okay, Malcolm, we can close 3 weeks, right? Yeah. And I'm going, hey, Brock, we can close in 3 weeks, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And then we closed.
Yeah.
And then we closed.
Yeah.
And he now could he have? This was a fully occupied property.
Yeah.
Totally
I think I know which one you're.
stabilized.
This is the apartment complex. It was like a 8 unit and a 2 unit, or I can't remember or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, he got it at the now. Did he
Yeah.
have to pay? And at that time, rates were lower,
Mhm.
so it was 11% on the bridge,
That sounds like a deal right now.
right? And it was like 4 points. But here was the thing:
Yeah.
he got it.
Yep.
4 months later, he went and refied.
Mm-hmm.
And refied it, paid that loan off, had a
Yep.
nice low income. Back then, the rates were lower.
Yeah.
So I think his long term rate was maybe like 5.5%,
Yeah.
6%.
Yeah. I remember him talking to him
Something
about
like that.
for a payoff. Yep.
He's good.
Yep.
So did he pay? And let's say hypothetically, easy math. Let's say he was paying 12%, so he paid 1% a month. He paid 1% a month for 4 months. And let's say hypothetically he paid 4 points.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he paid 8 points, but he got a 20% discount on the deal.
There's the math right there.
There's the math. And that's why investors, right, will say, yes, that math makes sense. I will do that loan and use the Kirkland Capital, product to fund my deal. And the math makes sense to do.
Yep.
If he tells that seller, give me 60 days, they're like, oh, well, then you're going to pay full boat, dude.
Yep.
People will discount for speed.
Yep. Yep. That's kind of the American way, right? Convenience. We'll pay for convenience.
Right. Exactly. And that's the niche that you guys fill, is you're able to get those deals done relatively quickly, compared to the bank. Folks are like, there's no way you guys are going to get that done at the house. Oh, yes, we will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's wrap up with a couple items that are more, off the real estate topic. But, Malcolm, I'm sure you're super busy now, actually being a famous book author, making the rounds, book rounds. But what things would you really want to do more of, but you don't have time for?
Travel. Love to travel. I have
What's on your bucket
a
list?
curious mind, and I'll just see something on YouTube and be like, ooh, that'd be a nice place to go. That'd be interesting. Bali is on my bucket list, right? Australia is on my, New Zealand especially.
They don't have multifamily in Australia. Ever heard? Did you know that?
No, I did not.
Yeah, they'll build like buildings, but then they'll like sell them out like condos, and people will buy like multiple sets of condos. But my understanding is they don't have the concept of a multifamily building that one entity owns.
Wow.
At least that's what I've been told by a couple of sources. I don't know if there's more nuance to it, or maybe the financing is there.
It doesn't surprise me, because the thing about travel is you go to another culture and you will see a completely different mindset. It's like that old joke about the two shoe salesmen that go to Africa. You familiar with this one?
No.
Oh, okay. The two shoe salesmen go to Africa, right? First shoe salesman calls back to the home office and says, listen, I'm coming home. These people don't wear shoes. Second shoe salesman calls back to the home office. Hey, send me everything you have. These people don't wear shoes.
Yeah, totally how you look at things.
And you go to another culture and you're like, oh, this would be terrible. And they're like, oh no, this is great. And you're like, never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
It's and having that different perspective, and then you come back home.
Yeah.
Right? It gives you a richer view on life, I think.
Yeah. And that's interesting you bring that up. I'm thinking also about how much people outside the U.S. are just looking for ways to get into the U.S. real estate market.
Absolutely.
And it's just amazing. I mean, you talk about all around the world, people want to immigrate here. And even if they don't want to or can't, they want to invest here in U.S. real estate. And, I think that's partly just our American spirit of, you can get us down for a little while, but we'll figure out a way to pick ourselves up, fix things, and get things going again. I mean, Detroit is really a testament to that.
And what people, unless you've been other places, you don't understand and fully have an appreciation for, is the C word of corruption. People in America will casually, oh, he's corrupt. Oh, he's corrupt. It's like, what did he do? Oh, he skimmed, $100 off every 10,000 that passed his desk. And it's like, oh, you go to Africa? They're like, hey, let me show you how it's done.
Yeah.
No, we're going to skim 900 off of every 1,000 that cross our desk.
Yeah.
You know, you get pulled over, and you're like, hey, officer, how you doing? He's like, I'm doing pretty good. How you doing? I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? And the captain's like, you got to pay him if we want to get to where we got to go. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know, and what people appreciate in other foreign countries, they don't have that here.
Yeah.
They're like, he didn't ask. You mean the guy just, like the realtor. The realtor agreed to a percentage, and he didn't try to ask for side money on the deal.
Mm-hmm.
The title company didn't ask for side money.
Mm-hmm.
So they look at doing business in other countries,
Yeah.
and they have to do these extra payoffs.
Yeah.
To everyone who touches the deal wants extra.
Yeah.
And they come here and they're like, you mean people actually do what they say? You got contracts, and you could go to the local, you know, judge and say, hey, this guy, you know, stole from me, and the judge said, okay, give him back his money.
Yeah.
And I don't have to pay off the judge.
Which reminds me, Malcolm, make sure you give me that bag of cash that, you know, for doing those loans for you.
Right. So everybody wants to come here and do business.
People just don't even think of that. It's like, you know, it's true. I mean, it's not like there's zero corruption here, but you can pretty much do business here without many times ever running into it.
Well,
which is good.
And you look at ROI, right?
Yeah.
Our clients are people that have a specific ROI target.
Mm-hmm.
How much more complicated would it be if you had to add a 25 to 35% corruption premium to getting the deal done?
Yeah.
It's like impossible. And they come here and they're like, oh my God, and we will do foreign investors.
Yeah, we will.
Right? We'll do foreign investors. And they're like, now they may, you know, put a little bit more down than an American citizen.
Yep.
Right? But the foreign investors like, man, I'm working on my green card right now.
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere. Like, let's do this, because this is still cheaper than trying to do business back home.
And I said we wouldn't go back to real estate. There we go.
There we go. I can't help it.
So, second to last question. What new belief, behaviors, or habits adopted within maybe the last 5 years have most positively impacted your life?
That's a hard one. There's a few actually. I'll tell you.
Okay,
pick
the top one or two.
I'll pick one of the top ones. I started listening to a motivational speaker named Eric Thomas probably 6-7 years ago, right? And Eric Thomas would talk about getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Ouch, it's a night owl. That's just painful.
And how he was like, I have, you know, no money, no connections, no education, but I got tremendous work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
You may be smarter than me, richer than me, but you will not outwork me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I was like, you know what? He's right. And so, and he talks about how do you work it. You don't just start at 3, right? You get up at 6, you do that, you know, if that's, you know, not normal for you. And then, you know, you try, okay, let me do 5 o'clock for a month or two. And then you go to 4. You know, now I'm at 3. Last night, swear to God, I woke up at 2:30 this morning, right? Part of me was like, normally I'm like 3:30, and I'm like, man, 2:30? Yes, but it's another hour to get stuff done. So I stayed up. Yeah. Right? And I have a 7 a.m. meeting with my loan officers that work for me, right? And we'll go from 7 a.m. to 8:30, right? Yeah. And I started it with one guy, because the guy was like, man, we should have a meeting, you know, talk about such. I was like, yeah, we should do it early. He's like, I can do early. Can you do early? Are you sure? And he's like, well, how early are you talking? And I was like, I don't want to stress him out. And he was like, you're not going to get up earlier than me. And he's like, okay, how about 7? 7's good, right? So I'm at 3:30. Yeah. And no one's calling me. Yeah. I'm not getting email, but I'm up.
That's time for that deep work. Now I know how you got that book written.
Right, and I can do stuff in the day that I may feel guilty about. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I can do, because there's one thing to work in the business, there's another thing to work on the business.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So by the time 7 o'clock rolls around, I'm like, all right, guys, let's go. I've been waiting on you. Yeah. You know,
Yep.
and they're like, man, why are you so like, you know, it's 7 a.m. in the morning, but I'm like, let's go, man, let's hit it. That extra time is awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
One of the things you mentioned about you got that work ethic, but you're starting with nothing. That's really one of the awesome things about real estate in America. You can start with literally, you got a job, I don't know, I mean, totally minimum wage job, but you got to rent someplace. You know, where else can you go where you can go on Bigger Pockets or meet up with a real estate meetup, and they will help you house hack, apartment hack, and build it. And then pretty soon, 5 years later, you're talking to Malcolm about doing your first commercial deal.
Right.
I mean, where else can you build a real estate empire in such a short period of time? Still, huge opportunities here for those who
People
want to work hard.
do residential wholesale,
Mm-hmm.
right? When they got nothing,
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
And they save up enough money from wholesaling to now become an investor.
Yeah.
Folks do the same thing in commercial. You know,
Yeah.
you know, like my guys, you know, we do loans,
yeah,
but then also as a group, we'll commercial wholesale a deal in a heartbeat.
yeah. So last question, other than your own book, I'm sure you're gifting that, and I can't recommend that more highly to anybody in the real estate or investing in real estate.
Financing
Right?
the Unbankable
Yeah.
Deal
Well, we'll have a link down in our notes and whatever we send out.
on
for that.
Amazon.
But what other books have you either gifted or you feel like those are really seminal books for you in your career, your life, etc.?
You know, you have the oldies but goodies. Think and Grow Rich. Every millionaire I ever met has that book on in their library. Awaken the Giant Within by
Any
Tony
ones that are
Robbins.
kind of off the radar,
No,
out of the box?
I'll tell you 2 recent books, same author, that are hot. I think everyone in business needs to read these books. $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And his brand new book that just came out maybe 3 weeks ago, a month ago, $100 Million Leads. Tremendous book. Both of them.
Great.
You know, I could not, and $100 Million Leads broke the internet. Because when he launched that book, you talk about having a book, and I had my launch party here
Mm-hmm.
in this office
Mhm.
that we're sitting in, and Alex did his launch, and he had 500,000 people,
That's crazy.
and it literally broke because Zoom. Because he's like, okay, we're gonna do Facebook Live, YouTube Live, we're gonna do Zoom,
Mm-hmm.
and he set up and he used the marketing strategies in the book to market the book, right?
Sort of proved his theorem,
Prove
right?
Prove this point. So real quick, one of the examples was using affiliates. Okay,
Yeah.
so he's on the thing, he's holding the book up. He goes, now there's 500 and some odd thousand people on this call. 126,000 of you came from affiliates. You know,
Yep.
sort of again, the proof is in the pudding,
Yeah.
right? And so I think every business owner
Yeah.
or aspiring
Yeah.
entrepreneur should look
You know,
at that.
to some degree, we actually adhere to that, and we believe in that as well as a lender. You know, when we were setting up, Chris, my business partner, he comes from the investment management side, so he didn't really have any idea around sort of the lending business, you know, the day-to-day on the ground stuff. And when I told him, I said, hey, I'm gonna do a deal where we're not gonna accept loans directly from borrowers. We're gonna set up, I'm gonna build a loan broker network. We're gonna only accept them through that. And that's really that affiliate network and the power of that. And yeah, it took us maybe a little longer to get going with that. But then, you know, we get to have great relationships with great loan brokers such as yourself that are actually of a better help to borrowers because you can guide them more than we could ever do it. And that's really the power of that affiliate business is in our case with the lending.
Relationships, having long-term, repeatable relationships.
For sure.
You know, absolutely.
Yeah.
100% agree.
Well, Malcolm, this has been a lot of fun talking with you about book, life, Detroit, commercial real estate, which is our passion. And thank you so much.
Hey, welcome to our town, man.
Great.
Good to have you.
All right, now let's go get something to eat.
Let's do that.